Hello, I am Dwayne Poole and the COO here at Zylo, and it's my pleasure, my distinct pleasure, to welcome you to the webinar, SaaS Operations, Driving Cost Savings at Scale. And if we could move right to the agenda, what we're going to be covering today essentially is SaaS operations, why that is important and why we need to kind of level up our focus around what is needed to actually drive results. Those results will center around the renewal, and we'll talk about what an important moment that is, how to build not just a renewal calendar, but much more importantly, a savings pipeline, what that can look like, what success then looks like in a real story. Before that, obviously, we'll be talking about how to do it, probably the most important thing on this webinar, and next steps. So again, Dwayne Poole, COO here at Zylo. Delainey, why don't you introduce yourself, and I'll kick us off.
Hi, everyone. I am Delainey. I run our services team here at Zylo.
Excellent. Thank you, Delainey. And, so what is COO? They're different in every company. Go to market or all things client-facing report to me. And what that allows us to do, and for me to truly understand, is how we position value to our prospects, and then how we deliver the value once you become a customer. This webinar is made up of both prospects and customers. So there's a wide range of attendees out there. But why that's all important on this one is because I get to see and hear the desired outcomes, both when you come in as a prospect and then also as a customer. And I can tell you that minimally 85% of the time, that desired outcome is we want to save money. And so that is why we have put this webinar together, to really drive into detail on how we do that. So we'll get right to it. And yes, why SaaS? Why now? Why operationalize it? Good questions. That's why we're here. And the next slide, just some context for everybody. This is the 2025 Zylo SaaS Management Index. It is the most comprehensive and longest running set of data on the SaaS industry. And according to that data, which is the most comprehensive, as I might have said, it is, you could see wide ranges here of company sizes as well as annual spend. The average organization spends $49 million on SaaS. Since 1999, or whenever your companies were founded, you've been buying SaaS. Departments have been buying SaaS. Employees have been buying SaaS. IT has been buying SaaS. It literally is out of control. Gartner states that 70% of all SaaS licenses are actually not managed by IT. So that's the sprawl, that's the chaos. My hunch is that's why everybody is on this webinar. How do we get control of it? Or more importantly, how do we optimize the savings? So if we go to the next slide, it's not just a spend. Obviously, you all know hundreds of apps. There's an example of some of our clients segmented into employee and company size there, as you see down the left. And the main things on this slide are twofold. One is that kind of the 1, 2, 3, fourth column over, which is the fact that the growth of SaaS grew 10% year over year, 24 to 25. It's not stopping. The average number of new apps added each year, as you can see as you go down your segment, and there's a logical reason for that. It's because your employees are paid to be productive. What makes them more productive is software. And so as you look across it, the sales department, marketing department, the developers, finance department, HR, project managers, everyone's paid to be productive, and software is helping them. And that will only continue, particularly with the advent of AI. Apps are exploding, as I'm sure everyone is aware. With the current apps you have, and then all these new apps added each year, you have hundreds of renewals. And those are happening again, not just in IT, not just in procurement, not just within or helped by SAM. There's so many touch points to make sure that a renewal can go as optimally as possible. And that's if you actually know about the renewals. For the prospects on the call, on average, when we go into a buying process, on average, we find 1.5 to 3 times the spend when we actually go in and find the SaaS software once you go from prospect into customer. So these numbers are actually ones, these are real, obviously, from that SaaS Management Index. But as you're thinking through as a prospect, we have some degree of control. We're controlling controllables, but how many more apps are out there? And therefore, how many more renewals are out there? Next slide. Why do I keep saying this word, renewals? It's because if you think about it, over the next 12 months, and it could start at any moment in time, this happens to be getting very close to or in budget season, but over the next 12 months, and if you're in budget season, calendar year fiscal, you're thinking about that 12 months, January through December next year. How many renewals are going to happen over that 12-month period? And they're already in your budget. These are renewals. You paid for them last year. They're rolling over into this year's budget. So it's in your budget already. We know there's waste inside there. Gartner estimates that 50% of licenses go wasted each year. So how does that roll down into every single renewal, and how do you optimize every single renewal? Well, next slide. You think about it and reframe it into it's actually 240 opportunities to save. There's an immense amount of resources at every single one of your companies that go into sales operations to optimize a sales pipeline. And here we are with our own pipeline. It literally is a savings opportunity pipeline. So for a 2,500 person company, on average, they're going to have somewhere in the neighborhood of 240 opportunities to save. We're just estimating that around half of a renewal cycle will be eligible each year. And so 240 opportunities to save. $30 million. Now that's the total contract value. So $3 million is 10% of that. $3 million coming out of that budget that can be used for what? Just list the things. A lot of companies want to reinvest in AI right now. Find the budget for that. Maybe it's just a merit increase. Maybe that you need to fund. Perhaps it's just dropping to the bottom line. Every company is looking for this. And so let's start to reframe SaaS management as SaaS spend management, and almost more importantly, or more literally, I should say, let's talk about it as a savings pipeline. So next slide. What is it? How do we operationalize that? Well, the strictest terms, you're talking about the day-to-day activities and processes that transform inputs into outputs. That's kind of a blanket description, but it's no different here. We need a centralized set of data that then we can activate action on through processes and day-to-day activities so that we can rationalize our applications when it comes to SaaS. We can avoid unnecessary spending. For instance, let's make sure we have licenses available to give out, that we're not over provisioning and then have to just go buy more unnecessarily. Let's make sure we're defending against true-ups. But in this particular webinar, we're going to focus on realized hard cost savings against the budget. Literally, when your superiors sit there and say, I need savings, they are talking about, I want money out of next year's budget so that I can reallocate it. That's what this is about. So bring the centralization together, inventory, license and contract data, application utilization data, and of course, the renewal/contract data. And what you have is the centralized data that needs operationalization so that we can act on and optimize every single renewal. Next slide. And this is no different, by the way. This is the same thing. This has been happening since software was developed. Even before software, people used paper to do it. How do we control all of our employees? Well, gosh, why is the Ford Motor plant in Detroit hiring all the people and all the ones that are down in Louisville hiring less? We don't know. We're going to need some kind of an HR system to centralize it. Human resource management, sales, velocity of the pipeline. We need an sales operations. We need FinOps. We need IT ops. We need service ops. We need DevOps. All of the ops all across the company. And the reason for that is it's distributed across the company, just like SaaS. It's time to operationalize it. And so what this particular webinar is going to be around, next slide, is how do we actually make sure that every renewal is optimized? Next slide. Every single renewal, we are able to answer 3 questions. I know this is super simplified, but this is the key. Just imagine it, 240 renewals, and every single time we can answer these questions. First of all, should we be renewing this application at all? Is it a redundant app? Is no one using it? Is it a risky app? Should we be renewing this application? Secondly, we are going to renew it. Now what? Let's make sure we know exactly the number of licenses we should be renewing based on utilization. Also, what is your company doing related to growth or hopefully not reduction? We need to know how many licenses we need to renew, utilization being the biggest input. And then finally, are we paying the right price? How are we making sure we're paying the right price? So those 3 questions answered at every renewal require up-to-date data and then a process to make sure that those things are being reviewed. That way, you're able to maximize the conversion of the savings pipeline. You're not going to save on every renewal. In fact, 5 years from now, the goal is to not save on a renewal. Then you've reached a state of zero waste. And that's what we're doing today, is taking that first step. Let's operationalize renewals first. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Trost, as I like to call her, the expert in this arena, but we all will play a role here. So Delainey, take it from here, please.
Thanks. Next slide, please. Awesome. So DP walked us through that why. I'm going to walk us through the what. So what exactly is a savings pipeline? Next slide. So when we talk about gaining control of SaaS spend at the time of renewal, it comes down to 3 core responsibilities. I like to think of these as the building blocks of successful SaaS management. So we've got managing your data, executing on that data that we're managing, and then driving visibility across your entire business. Most teams on this call may be good at 1 or 2 of those, but it's pretty rare that we're going to be experts on all 3. So that's where that operational rigor really matters. In the next slide, we're going to dive into that part 1. So let's start with the foundation, which is managing your data. I know that it sounds simple, and typically for IT teams, this is usually the biggest challenge, because without that clean, centralized system of record, it can become really impossible to make those informed decisions. So that's why we need to start by systemically digesting all the SaaS contracts, identifying the application owners, prioritizing which apps matter the most based on spend and strategic importance, and then understanding your spend data. This allows you to understand all of your SaaS apps as well. So knowing your data helps you know, and spend helps you know those apps. But you also need to understand your usage per app. So whether that's through integrations like SSO or other user level analysis, it's going to give you that reliable source of truth when it comes to how many licenses you are or are not using. And with this foundation in place, that's when we can really start uncovering the savings opportunities like unused licenses, or like DP mentioned, any duplicative overlapping tools. Main driver here is some teams do this in Zylo already. Others use a spreadsheet. Some use pen and paper. But regardless, the whole point is there has to be a centralized system of this data, because again, without that, we're just making uninformed decisions. So once we've got the system of record, we can go to the next slide, which is going to help us bring insights to impact. So really turning that data into dollars. I know for many organizations that I've seen, renewals are a bit frantic and can be last minute scramble, which often just leads to overspending or just really not knowing how many licenses you're needing and then kind of just grasping and grabbing a few extras. But our approach is to flip that on its head. So when discussing the importance of building that proactive, structured process, it's going to give you that control over your renewals and make sure that you're maximizing cost savings. But what does that look like? So 120 days out, that's really aligning with those app owners on your renewal strategy. DP mentioned it before. Are we renewing? Is this an overlapping tool? Do we need this? What's the business justification? And then if we are 90 days out, we really need to be executing license reclamations to make sure you're only paying for what is used. Or if it's a great situation and you do need more licenses, making sure that you're also adding on as well for growth. And then 60 days out, you're using your strengths to kind of position where your pricing is within the market. Are you getting a fair value, or do we need to negotiate a little bit?
So let me add just a piece of color here, if you don't mind. So as I was going through some of the earlier talking points, I don't know if I really emphasized this enough. And every day, not a day goes by when I'm talking to a customer or a prospect where it's a bit lost, meaning SaaS management. This is a vague term. What is SaaS management? Almost everyone equates SaaS management to managing licenses, when actually the only time you can actually impact your company's financial side of things, meaning save money, is only at renewal. That's why this moment matters so much. That's why a process like this allows for optimization. Okay, thanks, Delainey.
Yeah. And I think too, just the main driver is it has to happen at renewals. Suppliers will more than likely love for you to add on mid-contract term. But if you need to descope or actually lose some licenses, you're only going to get that at renewals. So thank you, DP. So then once we're kind of doing that analysis on your pricing, seeing kind of where you're at, that gives you all that leverage around 45 to 30 days out. You can then walk into your renewal with that complete data-driven plan of attack, making sure that you're clear, confident, and ready to get the best savings possible. Goal here is to eliminate all the surprises and also ensure that your team doesn't have to scramble. So now we've done the first two. Let's bring it home with driving visibility to the team. If you can go to the next slide, please. Awesome. SaaS strategy only works if everyone in the business can see it, because you get what you measure, especially when it comes to renewals. So the measurement towards your renewals is what's going to allow you to see progress towards removing all of that waste. So configuring and maintaining dashboards to show real-time cost savings, renewal timelines, and optimization opportunities is going to allow your team to have that source of truth shared across procurement, IT, finance, sales. This visibility, the goal is that it builds transparency and governance. Since SaaS management isn't just some reactive chore that we're constantly doing, it's that proactive business advantage. So with that what, we kind of have to drive it into the how. So what does it look like and how to actually execute that savings pipeline? Next slide, please. And one more. Awesome. So just like we discussed, we're going to start with that visibility. The first step is ensuring that centralized contract and spend data are in one place. So whether that's an SMP like Zylo, a spreadsheet, or another internal tool, just making sure that you have that visibility and source of truth. And alongside that, you need to identify and document who owns each application. Who's going to be driving these results at renewal? Who's in charge of a specific app? This is ongoing work, but it creates that accountability and ensures that every app has a clear point of contact for those decisions. That could be several folks on your team. Someone might be the decision maker on if you're keeping the tool and why. Another person might be the decision maker on how many licenses are actually needed. So just making sure that we've got those individuals identified and that they're making those decisions. Now, the next aspect of this too is that application prioritization to maximize cost savings. So you've got the visibility, but now we got to prioritize that. Like DP said, a lot of us have hundreds and hundreds of SaaS apps. Some of them aren't going to be up for renewal in the interim year. So what does that look like in regards to prioritization? Not every app deserves the same level of attention, so we're going to rank them. Ranking them by total spend, then upcoming renewal date as well. And from there, that's when we can really establish where usage data will come from, whether that is through direct integrations, SSO, or again, another data source, to help you understand how many licenses you need to renew to make those informed decisions. So that's going to help you focus on where cost savings potential is truly the greatest.
So real quick, Delainey, the prioritization is key. There's a lot of prospects on the people who are not using a centralized tool today necessarily. And so this prioritization piece I just want to touch on is if you have 240 renewals during a year and you're tasked with saving $2 million or $10 million, the first thing you're going to want to know, as I highlighted a little bit earlier, is what is my savings pipeline? What are the renewals that are actually coming due over the next 12 months? Now, you may say, wow, 240 is too many. I'm actually going to just do the top 80%. Maybe that's 25% of the 240, kind of the Pareto principle. It's like, okay, so 25% of 240 is 60. I'm going to focus in on 60. So that would be your phase one as you really jump into and to attempt to make a financial impact in your company. I'm going to just go ahead and make a comment about phase two here because it also is important, which is the rest of that matters. It matters because there's significant money to be saved, but a little commercial also, or a little endorsement on why also to do it. A lot of companies are sitting there saying, gosh, we are worried about AI. Where's all the AI? And what's interesting about that is every SaaS app within the next year will have AI. And so you really need to think about, well, gosh, what's the one moment when I can actually go in and actually enforce, or a better word, maybe it would be negotiate in requirements that I want to make sure we are protected as a company through the MSA, et cetera, because when we go through the sales process, I mean, the InfoSec and all the checks and balances are there, but it just gets forgotten about at renewal. It's a click through for some people when they do these on their own or in their own department. So having a compliance process ding, at renewal, that's so key. And it really, just to be frank, gets overlooked. It's just, okay, we're operating, everyone's productive, the sales guy's paid to sell, let's go make sure he keeps selling. Guess who's not worried about renewing Salesforce? The sales ops guy. He probably is in some cases. I don't mean to make an exaggeration, but imagine that down into the pager duties, down into the HubSpots, down into the tier 2, 3, 4, 5, that I don't really need to renew it. I just make sure it keeps running because it makes me productive. And then are they thinking about all of the protections and to the exposure that AI brings? No, this is why this needs to be operationalized. So just an additional kind of reason to pay attention, if you will, to a renewal pipeline. It's just not about savings. It's also about reducing exposure, waste and exposure reduction. Okay, thanks, Delainey.
Yeah, you're right. I was just having a conversation with someone recently too about how if we were to ask every single person on the call what their priority tool was, everyone's going to have a different answer depending on what team they're on. So just really making sure that we're driving impact at renewals and having honest conversation about what is and isn't needed is huge.
That's right. Who's responsible for it? I mean, I can't emphasize this enough. Everyone kind of just assumes procurement's doing it, and they're only responsible for so many. It's not all, and that's just the ones that the company knows about. And so, yeah, we'll just keep going. I could keep going, but I won't. Please continue.
One of the other huge aspects too that I think often gets, I guess, not as big of a view on is the process definition and change management. Honestly, SaaS management is change management. And I don't think that people realize that very often because visibility and prioritization, again, like they are so powerful, but they don't scale. So here's where we define how SaaS renewals and license reclamation should really work. This is going to include setting up alerts well ahead of your renewals to making sure that you're on top of them and doing that proactive approach, defining what your current process is for renewals and license reclamation versus what does your team want for that future state? What do you want to achieve when it comes to those things? And then also announcing the program across the organization. People need to know exactly what the process is, but more importantly, what their role is, especially if they are the one that is going to be driving the renewal for that app. So of course, this is not, again, it's not a one-time effort. This requires continuous updates. Let's take app owners, for example. People leave, teams change, owners of tools change. So how is your team updating that when that happens? If a contract is a multi-year contract, odds are the owner that was in year 1 might not be the same owner as year 3. So what does that process look like? Same thing with contract details. Once a renewal is complete, what happens? Who's updating that information? Contract details are different. Your renewal dates are different. Total contract value is probably different. So who's updating that information in a centralized format so that everyone has visibility as well? And then usage. Who's monitoring usage? Making sure that it's still flowing correctly, making sure that it's up to date, giving you accurate information. So again, change management really is key. And it's going to be that ongoing process so that your team knows what is occurring and is ready to make those changes when they do occur. And then as you know, you can really only drive the true cost savings and avoidance at time of renewal. So this is going to bring us to the next slide, which also has aspect 4, which is that renewal execution and license management. So with data and process in place, execution becomes a lot smoother. I'm a very big fan of this cadence, so I'm going to walk us through kind of what that looks like. We had previously before, but just to keep it super simple. 120 days out, validating the renewal with the app owner. Again, are we renewing? Is it a redundant app? Really just having those conversations and the business justification as to why something's renewing. Okay, it is. 90 days out, executing on license reclamation to find out what our actual versus purchase is, making sure that we're moving forward, we're only purchasing the licenses that are going to be used. 60 days out, again, focusing on evaluating pricing. So this could mean using a benchmarking service, working with a negotiation partner, or even comparing notes with a peer that you know also uses the same tool at their team. Key is to understand, where do you stand in fair pricing? But I think, DP, you'd agree, the bigger question is, Are you consistently running this review for every app, not just the big ones? Because consistency is what's going to drive long-term savings. And then 45 days out, you've got all those insights again. You've got the license counts, the usage trends, your pricing information. Now it's time to drive those renewals. This approach, again, the goal is be proactive, data-driven, and cost optimized. DP, you looked excited for a second.
Well, that's pretty much all day long. So one thing I do want to touch on here, and it's nice to jump in with before the value reporting, because one thing that I see over and over and over again is everyone seems to be in a maturity kind of spectrum as they relate to SaaS management and or just specific outcome called savings. And that is this you need accountability mechanisms. So I can't encourage this enough, but who's responsible? I'll use the earlier example. There are 60 renewals that have been determined to be the highest prioritized renewals over the next 12 months. I'm just using that as the phase one approach, if you will. We have an owner, got the contract information. We've determined the right source of usage, SSO, a direct integration, other forms that we could look at as well within Zylo. That let's kind of keep this generic. We're making sure that all that's being looked at appropriately, and are we getting the right price? So those three questions kind of come through each time. Who's making sure that is happening? So first of all, who's responsible for doing the actual commercials? Is this procurement? Is it not procurement? Is it an app owner? Is the app owner prepared to do that? Are they looking at the right data? Do you need to? Yes, you do. Create a process that actually makes sure, closes the loop, adds an accountability mechanism such that there's an approver that says, yes, the right data has been reviewed, so that we can start moving towards zero waste, meaning a state of zero waste, meaning we're reducing it every single time. And we're not even talking about compliance checks here yet. So this is just about savings. But imagine if you add compliance piece in, who's doing that? It needs a centralized, I'll even call it one person who's literally the SaaS ops director. And I can't place any more importance on it. Can it be a shared role? Sure, but we all know it works best when it rolls up to one person. I'll leave it at that. So yes, thank you. You read me correctly, Delainey.
Yep. And then to your point, value reporting. You're doing all of this incredible work. You've got your data, you're running your renewals. Where is that being shared? So having a central spot, again, we like to use dashboards here at Zylo to be able to showcase your actual savings, cost avoidance, having a view of like what is up for renewal. So just having that value reporting shared commonly across the team so that everyone is fully aligned and aware. And then go ahead, next slide. So those other two slides, this kind of brings those together. So this process, of course, builds that complete repeatable framework for SaaS management, which again is that change management. So to round it out, we start by creating that clean, up-to-date inventory of apps with the owners, the contract details, and of course the spend. And then from there, prioritizing those highest impact apps and running them through our prescriptive renewal process. Starting out at 120 days, it may seem long, it comes quick. And you have to remember too, a lot of renewals have sneaky auto renewal language in there as well. So making sure you're having that very strong proactive approach is going to help you maximize those cost savings. And then again, with those defined processes and organizational alignment, you can really execute renewals and license reclamations in a structured way. It's going to help drive that cost savings and cost avoidance to the full maximum you can. And then finally, closing that loop with value reporting again, ensuring stakeholders across the organization are seeing the tangible results of impact of your efforts and program. And now DP, I'm going to give it back to you because you're going to walk us through what does success actually look like when you scale.
Yeah, that's right. So, there's a lot here, right? And everyone's probably we hope anyway, we have provoked some thought in your own processes. Every situation's a little bit different, and where you're starting from, how many apps you have, how distributed it all is, how large you are, et cetera, as a company. So I think that it comes back to, wow, this sounds, it could be a lot, but you are probably starting to sense, yes, I can see where this deserves a centralized point of accountability as an example to really drive it. So is this really possible? And so the answer to that is absolutely yes. So with a centralized SaaS management platform, the centralization of all of that data and the continuous up-to-date nature of it, you can start to see the processes put into place and the activities that are needed to keep it up to date. You start to see the results. And so let me walk through a real-world example of a Zylo customer. This is Modernizing Medicine, ModMed. They're a 1,600-person shop. They're based in Southern Florida, and they're about at $24 million in spend. In SaaS spend, I should say. By this, that's pure SaaS. Pure SaaS. So none of the hyperscaler dollars are in here, et cetera. And how did they make this work? And so initially, I think this is important. The CIO set this as a goal and then set expectations. Particularly, he had control of IT, but got C-suite buy-in and then really launched the program particularly into the non-IT arena, and so that we could get buy-in to this program. This is part of the change management that Delainey is referring to. So when you launch the program, there's some explanation about what's about to happen, what you might see, et cetera. Established a singular leader and an owner of the results. And I think, and this person's in real life, this person's nickname is Mo. And in some of what we're doing here is based on the success they've had, because you start to really get an appreciation for all of the new apps coming in, going through the procurement process, being approved, but then it results in its point or its presence in the savings pipeline. So that singular leader now has to wait, who's going to be responsible for that renewal? When something renews, who's going to be responsible for that renewal? And of course, running the 120-day process, et cetera. That requires true project management. This is a big project for some people, and it's worth it. Not only from a savings standpoint, from a compliance standpoint. So there was some pushback, as you can imagine. Again, as I stated earlier, this is not the priority of the particularly app owners who are out in the business being paid to sell, market, develop, et cetera. They're not paid to renew. They're not paid to do that. They just want to make sure their software that helps them be successful remains on, as I've said earlier. So got some pushback, but the results came. And I'll talk about those here in a second. Today, the leaders across the business actually are reaching out for assistance on their renewals they're responsible for. Some of the project-oriented accountability mechanisms and the hierarchy of kind of what's needed to make sure consistency is in place. There are weekly reports on the priorities and progress, upcoming renewals, true ups, license availability, making sure you have licenses that are ready to be provisioned. Of course, the data updating, and of course, the tracking that Delainey referred to. And of course, then there's an ongoing kind of cadence of meetings to ensure the data is up to date and everyone's on the same page and aligned. What does that result in from a $24 million savings opportunity pipeline, if you will? And what happens is, next slide, they've saved to date $3 million in cost savings and $2 million in avoided potential costs. And of course, as I mentioned, improved compliance, 187 license workflows, meaning they've run a process where they go out to the business, ask if it's okay to remove the license, get the approval, run the deprovisioning. And they've done that 187 times, resulting in over 7,000 licenses recouped. And they've canceled 160 applications. Why? Because of that consistent oversight and accountability at the one point where they can actually make change, the renewal. And they have actually done this for every single renewal, not just a prioritized list. So that's a shining star, and very privileged to be working with ModMed. So with that, let's do a couple of the takeaways here. We can take some questions if possible. So key takeaways, I don't need to tell this to anybody here, but I do think because everyone gets taken in by the whirlwind of their actual day-to-day, you forget SaaS is distributed, and so are all of the renewals, obviously. If you take anything away today, take this back to your business. We can only make change, boss, when the renewal comes up. And so I need to know when those are, and I need to know we're optimized to do so, because you've got to build an operational oversight to make sure you're optimizing by answering those 3 questions. Do we need to renew it? How many licenses are needed? And are we getting the right price? And so just wanted to take those as the main takeaways. Obviously, the last one is we have a tremendous amount of experience here. And I think if you're on this call, you probably recognize that. So with that, we could probably take some questions. Hey, Daniel.
Great job, guys. We've got a lot of questions that have come in. I'm just going to read them off to you, and then DP, Delainey, if you want to respond. So starting with, how would you obtain utilization data, as some providers claim they cannot provide this?
Delainey, you want to take a stab? I'll jump in if I need to.
Yeah, I can start there. If for some reason suppliers are saying that they cannot provide this, if you have an admin panel, you should be able to go in yourself and also pull a report. But I do suggest continuing to ask them and kind of just force them. Like if it is a usage-based application, they can 100% pull your usage report for you. But also just making sure too that there's a few avenues for connecting usage, whether that is a direct integration, if they have one in any specific like SMB tool that you're using, or SSO data, if it's, especially if your team has it SAML enforced. And then at Zylo, one of the things that we use is Usage Connect as well, which is taking that usage report directly from the supplier or from the admin panel, and then making sure that that is flowing into Zylo. Anything that I missed there, DP?
I don't think so. The only like softer benefit, if you will, or would be one that where when you're looking at the aggregate data like we do and all of the relationships or transactions that occur between you're probably not having that issue with Salesforce, but let's just call it a company X. You have this situation where, hey, I'm not able to get any utilization. We probably know if that's an issue or not because we're seeing it elsewhere. Just that's another kind of soft benefit.
Great. Next question. How could we strategize getting the information for a renewal relevant to how many licenses should we renew as the vendor controls that information?
Can you say that one more time, Daniel?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. How could we strategize getting the information for a renewal relevant to how many licenses should we renew as the vendor controls that information?
So I'll take a stab at this. I'll take a stab, meaning I'm going to interpret it the way I'm interpreting it, and which is, hey, I'm getting a proposal from company X again, and they've told me this is how many licenses that you're going to renew, or they've suggested or proposed this is how many you need to renew. And so I would suggest to you that, and I may be misinterpreting this, but one of the keys, if not the key, the single biggest piece of leverage you have in every negotiation is just simply how many licenses you need. Because I can remember one particular story where I'll leave names out, but a large data storage company approached a very well-known SaaS company, customer of ours, and said, you're going to need to renew 1,800 licenses. And thankfully, they had the utilization data by one of many ways that Delainey covered just a second ago. And so we're able to go back and say, no, we only need 1,100 licenses due to lack of utilization. And so unfortunately, in that case, they actually didn't do the third question. So they left money on the table because you know how vendors are, right? They're going to come in and go, okay, then I'm going to take your unit price way up. But then obviously that third question becomes so important. Are you paying the right price? So even though you use that one lever, don't forget about that next lever, making sure you're actually getting the right kind of benchmark data, whether that be using Zylo, using your own benchmarks, using contacts in the industry, using past experiences, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But making sure you're paying a right price. So I think I interpreted that, but I'm not certain, Daniel. So we should be able to help though.
Great. Next question. How does the centralized SaaS contract ingestion process work, specifically in Zylo?
But Delainey, I can take it too, whatever. So today, this is a great question. I'm really happy to answer this one. Today, what we do is you simply send the contracts to contracts@zylo.com, and we take that information and actually input them into Zylo for you with a QA on your end to make sure all the information is right. In the very, in the very near future, however, we are launching a feature called Contract AI Assist, which will actually leverage AI in assessing that information, automatically putting it in with an entire interface for you as the owner of that contract to ensure the data is correct. And then also you can manually update it as well. However, all of that information is seamless and is completely scalable. But we have clients like Home Depot, like Intuit, Salesforce, et cetera, with a tremendous amount of contracts. And obviously that data is so important to the renewal pipeline or savings pipeline as I've described it. So obviously we want to help you as seamlessly as possible get that data in.
Great. I'm going to do 2 more questions here. How do you collect usage for non-supported integrations?
I can take that one, DP.
Sure.
Kind of what we had mentioned earlier too. One of the ways that I always recommend is working directly with the supplier to have them either pull a usage report for you if it's user-based, or again, if you are an admin in the tool, typically there's an admin panel which you can go in and then pull the report yourself for your teams. Other options too, just making sure that you get that report, because again, like if you're using Zylo, in Zylo we can use Usage Connect, which we would then take that usage report and flow that information into Zylo's platform directly. If it is user-based or license-based, you will always be able to see your usage. And if not, I would challenge you to talk to the supplier about transparency. You should always be able to be transparent in what you are actually using with the tool. And if they're trying to sway you another way and say that you cannot obtain that information, more often than not, in my years of having negotiated with hundreds of suppliers, it's just them honestly being a little lazy and not wanting to pull it or not wanting you to descale. So they can pull it for you.
Yeah. And you can also look in kind of our portfolio benchmarks and say, oh, well, insert competitor's name would be happy to give me that data. So you better give me the data. Anyway, yeah, just being colloquial about it. Yes.
And we're going to end on a tricky one. And just to be clear, any questions that we didn't get to today, we will be sure to reach out to you and respond to them. Question is it compliant to capture personally identifiable information in SaaS usage data for renewals and license reclamation?
What was the first term, Daniel? Sorry.
Personally identifiable information, PII.
Is it okay to collect it? Is that what you said?
Compliant to capture it.
Compliance. Well, I guess that would, well, there's a lot of it depends on that one. I would tell you that there isn't a lot in personally identifiable. There's not the personally identifiable data that is being referred to. I mean, maybe if it's an employee expensed app, potentially, there might be some in there. I would say, is it okay? Is going to be up to your own internal compliance standards. If you want to compare it to European standards versus US standards, et cetera, we could go deeply there, but I would tell you that it's going to be up to your practices, whether you would want to collect that or not. I think maybe I'm misinterpreting. Delainey, if you interpret it differently, please.
I think it depends on what specific personal information.
Right.
It wouldn't necessarily always be compliant to capture personal data, especially with the GDPR. So I think it would just be understanding like what exact personal data that you're referring to first, and then we could dive deeper into that.
For sure.
Great. Well, those are the questions we're going to cover this afternoon. DP, Delainey, anything else you want to add before we talk about next steps?
Gosh, I don't know. I don't think so. Happy to talk more about it with anybody who would like to. And the next steps really are for clients. Your strategic account executives will reach out, and for your prospects, what is a strategic account executive? Those are the stewards to drive our clients toward their desired outcomes. 100% responsible for that. And for you prospective contacts, your account executive, your new business representative will reach out and continue the conversation. So with that, Daniel, I thank everyone for their attention, and we really appreciate it. Let us know how we can help.
Thanks, everybody. Recording of the session will be available within the next day. Thanks again for attending.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.